the people do that. Okay, and that's what happened. Verse 3, yet King Zedekiah sent Yekukal, the son of Shelemiah, and Zephaniah, the son of Messiah, the priest, to Jeremiah the prophet, saying, please pray to Yahweh, our Elohim, on our behalf. You know, it's intriguing how Zedekiah refuses to listen to Elohim, refuses to listen to Jeremiah, and then he goes to Jeremiah and says, would you please pray to Yahweh, our Elohim, on our behalf. Well, keep in mind, the book is not laid out chronologically at all. I mean, not at all. As a matter of fact, this instance right here is probably the same one recorded in Jeremiah 21. And let's take a look at that. It starts in the first verse. It says, the word which came to Jeremiah from Yahweh when King Zedekiah sent to him Pashur, the son of Malchiah, and Zephaniah the priest, the son of Messiah, saying, please inquire of Yahweh on our behalf. For Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, is warring against us. Perhaps Yahweh will deal with us according to all his wonderful acts, that the enemy may withdraw from us. Then Jeremiah said to them, you shall say to Zedekiah as follows. Thus says Yahweh, Elohim of Israel, behold, I'm about to turn back the weapons of war which are in your hands, with which you are warring against the king of Babylon and the Chaldeans who are besieging you outside the wall, and I shall gather them into the center of the city. And I myself shall war against you with an outstretched hand and with a mighty arm, even in anger and wrath and great indignation. I shall also strike down the inhabitants of the city, both man and beast. They will die of a great pestilence. Then afterwards declares Yahweh, I shall give over Zedekiah, king of Judah, and his servants and the people, even those who survive in this city, from the pestilence, the sword, and the famine, into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and into the hand of their foes, into the hand of those who seek their lives. And he'll strike them down with the edge of the sword. He will not spare them, nor have pity, nor compassion. So it appears that Jeremiah had this discussion, gave that discussion in chapter 21, and the actions are in this chapter as to what happened. and I'll tell you, as far as chronology goes, Jeremiah is probably the most difficult book to follow. You have to look at each. One chapter does not necessarily succeed the next by any stretch. Verses 4 and 5 of Jeremiah 37. Now Jeremiah was still coming in and going out among the people, for they had not yet put him in the prison. Meanwhile, Pharaoh's army had set out from Egypt, and when the Chaldeans who had been besieging Jerusalem heard the report about them, they lifted the siege from Jerusalem. Now this was Pharaoh Hophros, or Apries, who reigned in Egypt for about 25 years. He entered into a confederacy with Zedekiah, and he marched out of Egypt with a huge army, and he's going to help out. Now you remember Elohim said, don't go to Egypt for help, okay? So you come to me for help. But he went to Egypt, and they developed an alliance. And I think Zedekiah thought a lot more of it than the Pharaoh did. But, you reach a point with Zedekiah, you say, well, it's kind of late now. I don't think there's any hope here. You get that impression. That's not exactly the case, though. Let's go to verse 6, Jeremiah 37. Then the word of Yahweh came to Jeremiah the prophet, saying, thus says Yahweh, Elohim of Israel, thus you are to say to the king of Judah, who sent you to me to inquire of me, behold, Pharaoh's army, which has come out for your assistance, is going to return to its own land of Egypt. The Chaldeans will also return and fight against this city, and they will capture it and burn it with fire. Well, he's saying, Jeremiah is told by Elohim, don't get your hopes up. Yeah, they're going to pull out. They're going to pull out, but Egypt's going to turn around and they're going to come back. And they will destroy the city. Verses 9 and 10. Thus says Yahweh, do not deceive yourselves, saying the Chaldeans will surely go away from us, for they will not go. For even if you had defeated the entire army of Chaldeans who are fighting against you, and there were only wounded men left among them, each man in his tent, they would rise up and burn this city with fire. See, Elohim doesn't need big armies to accomplish what he wants. He's going to accomplish his will. And he says the Chaldeans are going to return. And when they do, if there's only a few wounded soldiers left after you battle with them, you're still done. You're still finished. Verses 11 and 12. Now it happened when the army of the Chaldeans had lifted the siege from Jerusalem because of Pharaoh's army, that Jeremiah went out from Jerusalem to go to the land of Benjamin in order to take possession of some property there among the people. The Chaldeans left because of the news about Pharaoh's army, and Jeremiah went out of the city to take possession of some property in the land of Benjamin. Verse 13. While he was at the gate of Benjamin, a captain of the guard, whose name is Uriah, the son of Shelemiah, the son of Hananiah, was there. And he arrested Jeremiah the prophet, saying, "You're going over to the Chaldeans." But Jeremiah said, "A lie! I'm not going over to the Chaldeans." Yet he would not listen to him. So Uriah arrested Jeremiah, brought him to the officials. Then the officials were angry at Jeremiah and beat him. They put him in jail in the house of Jonathan the scribe, which they had made into the prison. For Jeremiah had come into the dungeon, that is the vaulted cell, and Jeremiah stayed there many days. So Jeremiah now is falsely being accused of being a traitor. Apparently, they connected his message of Jerusalem's going to be destroyed and said, "You're leaving the city now and going to Babylon with your buddies." Well, the officials arrested him and put him in prison. Verse 17. Now King Zedekiah sent and took him out, and in his place or palace the king secretly asked him and said, "Is there a word from Yahweh?" And Jeremiah said, "There is." Then he said, "You will be given into the hand of the king of Babylon." That's not what he wanted to hear, okay? Zedekiah knew Jeremiah was a true prophet of Elohim. He's a mediator between Elohim and the people. What does a prophet mean? What's it mean to be a prophet? You speak the words of the Father. Yeah. It's strange to think you're prophesying when you say, "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy." But you are. Those are the words of the Father. Well, Jeremiah says the message is that Zedekiah will be given over to the king of Babylon. So there's no hope. Verse 18, moreover, Jeremiah said to King Zedekiah, "In what way have I sinned against you or against your servants or against this people that you put me in prison? Where then are your prophets who prophesied to you, saying, the king of Babylon will not come against you or against this land? But now, please listen, O my master the king. Please let my petition come before you, and do not make me return to the house of Jonathan the scribe, that I may not die there." Jeremiah says, "Hey, I haven't done anything wrong. I don't deserve this imprisonment and this suffering you're putting me through." They beat him, okay? He knows that if he returns to that prison, he's likely going to die. You know why? He's in his 60s. And they beat the guy. And when they say they stuck him in a prison, they don't mean just a prison cell. Okay? It's a dank, nasty place where they,
like a dungeon.
or worse. Yeah. What's that?
Disease.
Oh yeah, disease is rampant, and that just lifespan is for a healthy person is going to be short. Verse 21, then King Zedekiah gave commandment, and they committed Jeremiah to the court of the guardhouse and gave him a loaf of bread daily from the baker's street until all the bread in the city was gone. So Jeremiah remained in the court of the guardhouse. So that dungeon they're talking about was actually an old cistern. Okay, that's where they were going to keep him. He was spared from that, and now he gets to eat a piece of bread a day, as long as bread holds out. Okay. Chapter 38, verse 1. They try to challenge me with these names. And I really appreciate that too, by the way. Now, Shephatiah, the son of Mattan, and Gedaliah, the son of Pashur, and Ucal, the son of Shelemiah, and Pashur, the son of Malchiah, heard the words that Jeremiah was speaking to all the people, saying, well, okay, we're continuing here on the accounts of the perils of Jeremiah. This happened just before Jerusalem was overrun by these Chaldeans. These 4 men of influence heard the words of Jeremiah. And you know what? They don't like what they're hearing. All right?
Who are these 4 men? I mean, what nationality or how are they, who are they affiliated with?
Israel.
Okay.
They're all Israelites. They don't like what they're hearing. And I guess, the thing to do is just beat the messenger, right? That'll solve the problem, won't it? Yeah, that'll solve it. Verses 2 and 3, thus says Yahweh, he who stays in this city will die by the sword and by famine and by pestilence. But he who goes out to the Chaldeans will live and have his own life as booty and stay alive. Thus says Yahweh, this city will certainly be given into the hand of the army of the king of Babylon, and he will capture it. Well, this message from Jeremiah is not welcome by the officials. These are officials in the courts there in Judah. Jeremiah says that all who resist the Chaldeans are going to die by the sword, by famine, and by pestilence. And I don't know where fire fits in with famine and pestilence, but it's in there somewhere, okay? Verses 4 and 5. Then the officials said to the king, now let this man be put to death, inasmuch as he is discouraging the men of war who are left in the city and all the people by speaking such words to them. For this man is not seeking the well-being of this people, but rather their harm. So King Zedekiah said, behold, he's in your hands, for the king can do nothing against you. Now, I don't know what he's claiming here, if these officials are just overruling him on what they should do. And I don't know that Zedekiah's up to a big fight with these guys, So he says, you can have him. And I think personally he didn't like what Jeremiah had to say either. Verse 6, so they took Jeremiah and cast him into the cistern of Malchiah, the king's son, which was in the court of the guardhouse, and they let Jeremiah down with ropes. Now in the cistern there was no water, but only mud, and Jeremiah sank in the mud. So Jeremiah is left in the bottom of this muddy cistern to die. Old well. It's an old well. Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is probably isn't that gigantic.
Well, I know, but it's not like
right. It's
dug wells with machines.
No, right. This is something you have to dig. They had to dig them by hand, so they had to get down big enough for them to get down there and dig. Now, keep in mind here, they're leaving him to die alone in this muck and mire, no food, no water. Let's just get rid of him. Verse 7. But Ebed-Melech, the Ethiopian, a eunuch, while he was in the king's palace, heard that they had put Jeremiah into the cistern. Now the king was sitting in the gate of Benjamin, and Ebed-Melech went out from the king's palace and spoke to the king, saying, my master the king, these men have acted wickedly in all that they have done to Jeremiah the prophet, whom they've cast into the cistern. He'll die right where he is because of the famine, for there's no more bread in the city. So an Ethiopian eunuch heard of the distress of Jeremiah. Now, as far as Hebrew goes, this guy is Ebed-Melech. That means servant of the king. When you ever see the word Melech, as in Melchizedek or Melchizedek, think king, okay? Melchizedek, that's king of righteousness. And this is Ebed-Melech, means servant of the king. So if you ever see that word in a name or whatever, Melech, think of king. And the name has something to do with that. Well, Ebed-Melech went to the king and informed him that they were putting Jeremiah to death in a very slow and torturous fashion. Verse 10, then the king commanded Ebed-Melech the Ethiopian, saying, take 30 men from here under your authority and bring up Jeremiah the prophet from the cistern before he dies. So it appears here Zedekiah wants to help Jeremiah. But there were officials that were previously placed in office by his wicked brother or nephew, Jehoiakim. And no, I think that was Jehoiakim was his nephew, I believe. The authority they had was apparently great, but Zedekiah did help Jeremiah here. Verse 11, so Ebed-Melech took the men under his authority and went into the king's palace. How many did he take again to get him out of that cistern? 30. Took 30 guys. I don't know if it took all them to get him out of there. That just shows you what kind of a place they had stuck him in. So Ebed-Melech took the men under his authority, went to the king's palace to a place beneath the storeroom, and took from there worn-out clothes and worn-out rags and let them down by the ropes into the cistern of Jeremiah. Then Ebed-Melech, the Ethiopian, said to Jeremiah, now put these worn-out clothes and rags under your armpits, under the ropes, and Jeremiah did so. And so they pulled Jeremiah up with the ropes and lifted him out of the cistern. And Jeremiah stayed in the court of the guardhouse. So these 30 men, they lifted Jeremiah out of the old cistern. Apparently a very deep and treacherous thing. Yeah.
You have to think that he has to think the Lord let him down when he gets in a situation like that.
One would think he's gonna remember something though. Yeah, you would have to think so. It would be difficult to be bright and cheery, to be sitting down in that old muddy, nasty cistern, which you could, I don't know if he could squat down in there sufficiently or not and start singing, don't worry, be happy. I don't see that happening.
I'd be asking, why is this happening to me?
Exactly. What have I done? Although, he knows it's not him. It's the situation. And he needed, Jeremiah is the man of the hour. Okay? Someone's got to do Elohim's bidding. Who's willing to do it? It ain't going to be easy. Verses 14 and 15. Then King Zedekiah sent and had Jeremiah the prophet brought to him at the third entrance that's in the house of Yahweh. And the king said to Jeremiah, I'm going to ask you something. Do not hide anything from me. Then Jeremiah said to Zedekiah, if I tell you, will you not certainly put me to death? Besides, if I give you advice, you won't listen to me. Well, it looks like Jeremiah knows him, Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And Zedekiah is afraid of being looked at as a traitor by the other Jews and being abused again. Jeremiah says, no, that's not going to happen again. Okay, I'm not going back down that cistern. Verse 16. But King Zedekiah swore to Jeremiah in secret, saying, as Yahweh lives, who made this life for us, surely I will not put you to death, nor will I give you over to the hand of these men who are seeking your life. Then Jeremiah said to Zedekiah, thus says the Yahweh, the Elohim of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, if you will indeed go out to the officers of the king of Babylon, then you'll live. The city will not be burned with fire, and you and your household will survive. But if you do not go out to the officers of the king of Babylon, then this city will be given over to the hand of the Chaldeans, and they'll burn it with fire, and you yourself will not escape from their hand. Okay, here we are. The city's surrounded. They've been under siege for over a year. Okay, there's no food left. And he says, okay, Elohim said you're getting out. You're getting out. All you got to do is go out there and surrender. Okay? And then people will all live. They won't burn the city down. Okay? That's all you got to do. And Zedekiah, though, he has to do this surrendering thing. If he does, everyone gets spared and saved. But if he doesn't do it, the city will be destroyed. He'll be given over to the king of Babylon in much, much worse situations. And this late in the game, I'm going to give you a chance. Okay? What does he have to do? What does he have to do? Just do one thing. Just do what he says. Do what Elohim says. That's all he has to do. And everybody will live. Okay? Just do what he says. I don't know. I'm not under the law. And that's all. It's really the same message to us. Just do what he says. Is he asking us? What? Yeah. I mean, it's life. It's the same thing. I mean, there's blessings and curses here. There's life and death. That's the difference. Just do what he says. The life and the blessings are here. Death and the curses are here. And he says, no, I can't do that. Let's see what he says here. Verse 19. Then King Zedekiah said to Jeremiah, I dread the Jews who have gone over to the Chaldeans, lest they give me over into their hand and they abuse me. Well, heaven forbid that happen. But Jeremiah said, they will not give you over. Please obey Yahweh and what I'm saying to you, that it may go well with you and you may live. Zedekiah is afraid of being looked at as a traitor by the other Jews who were already taken captive. Jeremiah says that won't happen. That's not going to happen. You don't have a choice. Verse 21, but if you keep refusing to go out, this is the word which Yahweh has shown me. Then behold, all the women who have been left in the palace of the king of Judah are going to be brought out to the officers of the king of Babylon. And those women will say, your close friends have misled and overpowered you while your feet were sunk in the mire. They turned back. They'll also bring out all your wives and your sons to the Chaldeans, and you yourself will not escape from their hand, but will be seized by the hand of the king of Babylon, and the city will be burned with fire if he refuses to surrender. You see, Elohim has said there is going to be a change of the guard here. Okay? It's no longer going to be Judah in charge of this land. Why? Their disobedience, but what in particular? They didn't do the land Sabbaths for 490 years. 1 year out of 7. You've got to let the land rest. And he says in the 6th year, every time, it'll grow a little extra for you to carry over for a year. How's that sound? But one thing took over in the minds of those in Judah. It's that G word, greed. Well, let off for a year. Well, it cost me a lot of money. Yeah? Okay. Don't work on the 7th day? Well, are you crazy? A lot of money to be made out there on that 7th day. Have you ever seen, have you know, when's Rogers Avenue the most crowded? All day Saturday. Why? Well, you got to go get your stuff. You got to go do your grocery shopping. You got to do your chores. You got to go to the mall. You got to, yeah, that's the time to do it. But that's what happened. He said there's going to be a changing of the guard. And whether you agree with it or not, now I'm going to have an easier way for you to do it. You go out and do it like I tell you it's going to be done, and you'll live. And I want you to go to Babylon. Remember, he said, I want you to go there, and I want you to start your life. I want you to build homes. I want you to plant vineyards. You're going to be there a while, okay? But I'm going to bring you back. But look at what they're doing. They're standing there, and they're saying, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do what you say. Verse 24, then Zedekiah said to Jeremiah, let no man know about these words, and you will not die. But if the officials hear that I've talked with you and come to you and say to you, tell us now what you said to the king, and what the king said to you, do not hide it from us, or we will not put you to death. Then you are to say to them, I was presenting my petition before the king not to make me return to the house of Jonathan to die there. Now, if the officials hear that Jeremiah went to the king, Jeremiah is only supposed to tell a partial truth there. Jeremiah is to only admit that he wanted to stay out of that nasty dungeon, and he's asking permission to stay out of that particular imprisonment. Verse 27, then all the officials came to Jeremiah and questioned him. So he reported to them in accordance with all these words, which the king had commanded him. And they ceased speaking with him since the conversation had not been overheard. So Jeremiah stayed in the court of the guardhouse until the day that Jerusalem was captured. When the officials heard Jeremiah did speak to Zedekiah, they wanted to know all about it. And Jeremiah only told them what Zedekiah said to say. The the place was not bugged. The wires were not tapped. Okay? Nobody was listening on the other side of the wall with a stethoscope to check. Yeah. Yeah, no notes on there. And Jeremiah now is going to be rewarded and gets to stay in a much nicer jail. Chapter 39, verse 1. Now it came about when Jerusalem was captured in the 9th year of Zedekiah, king of Judah, in the 10th month. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and all his army came to Jerusalem and laid siege to it. You know, you get a madman like Nebuchadnezzar, and he's got you where you can't do anything, and you have to give up, and you don't. How do you think he feels about that?
Waste them all.
Exactly, waste them all. Nothing but fury. Nothing but fury. And Jeremiah warned the Babylonian army they're going to be back. And this would have been about January of 590 BC. Verse 2, in the 11th year of Zedekiah, in the 4th month, the 9th day of the month, the city wall was breached. That would be about July of 588 BC. The city walls were broken down. The siege lasted 18 months. Verse 3, then all the officials of the king of Babylon came in and sat down at the middle gate. Nergal-Sarezer, Samgar-Nebu, Sarsakim the Rebsaris, Nergal-Sarezer the Rabmag, not the Rabmag, anybody but the Rabmag, and all the rest of the officials of the king of Babylon. And it's probably 3 men here. It looks like there's 6 names, but I think there's only 3. The second name after the name is a given title. Okay, Nergal-Sharezer, who was Sam-Gar-Nebo, means keeper, priest of Nebo. Sarsakim, who was Rebsarsis, that means the chief eunuch. That's probably the least happy guy. And Nergal-Sharezer, who was Rabmag, that means chief magi. And we learn from the ancient Greek historians of Alexander, Justin, and Curtius that the magi attended to the king during war. Verses 4 and 5, it came about when Zedekiah, the king of Judah, and all the men of war saw them, that they fled and went out of the city at night by way of the king's garden through the gate between the 2 walls, and he went out toward the Arabah. But the army of the Chaldeans pursued them and overtook Zedekiah in the plains of Jericho. And they seized him and brought him to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, at Riblah in the land of Hamath, and he passed sentence on him. This was prophesied by Jeremiah in verse 18 of that last chapter. If you do not go out to the officers of the king of Babylon, the city will be given over to the hand of the Chaldeans. They'll burn it with fire. You yourself will not escape from their hand. The army of Judah did not stand a chance against this Chaldean army without the mighty hand of Elohim protecting them. That was their chance. And he said, I'm against you. So that's that. Verses 6 and 7, then the king of Babylon slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes at Riblah. The king of Babylon also slew all the nobles of Judah. He then blinded Zedekiah's eyes and bound him in fetters of bronze to bring him to Babylon. The fate of Zedekiah was brutal. It didn't have to be that way. It did not have to be that way. But he watched his sons be executed before they gouged his eyes out. Verse 8. The Chaldeans also burned with fire the king's palace and the houses of the people. They broke down the walls of Jerusalem. Jeremiah warned the people of this fate for a long, long time, but the people would not listen. Jeremiah 9, verse 11, and I'll make Jerusalem a heap of ruins, a haunt of jackals, and I'll make the cities of Judah a desolation without inhabitant. Jeremiah 17:27, but if you do not listen to me, to keep the Sabbath day holy, by not carrying a load and coming in through the gates of Jerusalem on the Sabbath day, then I shall kindle a fire in its gates, and it will devour the palaces of Jerusalem and not be quenched. Jeremiah 21:10. For I've set my face against this city for harm and not for good, declares Yahweh. It'll be given into the hand of the king of Babylon, and he'll burn it with fire. It's interesting the wording he uses. I set my face against that city. Remember what Ezekiel was told to do? Lay down the side, and there's going to be an iron plate, and make up a little Jerusalem model here, put a little iron plate there. It says, my face is set against Jerusalem for this period of time. Okay? And said, lay on your one side for 390 days. A day is a year that my face will be turned against them. And for Judah, 40 more days on the other side. A day is a year. 430. And from the time that we see the destruction of Jerusalem and them entirely wiping out Jerusalem and taking away all their implements of worship, from the day that started, you could look at this punishment of Judah. 430 years in total. They're in Babylon for 70. That left 360. And then he says in Leviticus 26, he says it 4 times. If you still don't turn to me and obey me, I'm going to multiply your punishment times 7. I'm going to multiply your punishment times 7. I'm telling you I will. If you still don't obey me. So you take 360 times 7, 2,520 years, I think. Off the top of my head. Convert that from 360-day years into a solar year. 365.2422 days in a year. Comes out to be somewhat less. You start at that day that Nebuchadnezzar completely took everything out of Jerusalem and add that time frame where my face will be set against Jerusalem. It takes you to May 15th, 1948. Takes you right to the day. That punishment period for Israel, they were a couple hundred years ahead in getting destroyed. There was no righteous king in Israel at all. There were no righteous people in Israel at all. They didn't even try and go and worship in Jerusalem, where the temple is. They set up their own places to worship. And they had golden calves there to worship. Elohim just multiplied theirs times 7. And the fascinating thing about that one is it's hard to get a date. I couldn't get a date to start. I had a year. It was 724 something. But I didn't have a date as to when Assyria destroyed Israel. I didn't get a date. So I thought about it. What would be a good date that bad things happen in Israel? And I thought about the 9th of Av. What happened on the 9th of Av? Does anybody recall? Not good. Ever. Always bad stuff. Both temples were destroyed on the 9th of Av. Both of them. Both of them. So I said, let's go to the 9th of Av in that year of actually 725, which left 724 plus years there. Do that, you do the math, add it up, takes you to June 10th, 1967. The end of the 6 Days War, or when they got Jerusalem back again. Elohim, his face is no longer turned away from Israel. His face is no longer turned away from Judah. How come they're not 2 nations? Well, he said in Ezekiel, there won't be 2 sticks, there's going to be 1. Okay? 1 stick. It's 1 nation. See, this whole thing is miraculous. We're coming up on the 50th anniversary of that 6 Days War. Got a couple of short videos we need to look at, I think, Friday night, just on exactly what happened in that 6-day war. Truly miraculous. Almost as miraculous what happened in May 15th, 1948, because they had nothing. They had like a slingshot and a pocket knife, and all these nations came against them, and they won. Well, here, he says it at this time is when he's starting it. This is what, I just catch this. That's why I got off track here. Just like he says in Ezekiel, I've set my face against this city. Okay? He told him to make a model of Jerusalem, put an iron plate there and lay down on the side. Okay? My face is separated from you. And that's the period of time. And if you want to look at prophecy that is truly amazing that happened in our lives, that's it. That's pretty amazing. Jeremiah warned them over and over again. Jeremiah 34, verse 2, thus says Yahweh, Elohim of Israel, go and speak to Zedekiah, king of Judah, and say to him, thus says Yahweh, behold, I'm giving the city into the hand of the king of Babylon, and he will burn it with fire. You know? Then in verses 19 through 21 of that chapter 34, the officials of Judah and the officials of Jerusalem, the court officers and the priests and all the people of the land who passed between the parts of the calf. Remember, that's the covenant they made. I'll give them into the hand of their enemies and into the hand of those who seek their life. And their bodies shall be food for the birds of the sky and the beasts of the earth. And Zedekiah, king of Judah, and his officials I'll give into the hand of their enemies, into the hand of those who seek their life, and into the hand of the army of the king of Babylon, which is gone away from you. Go back to Jeremiah 39, verses 9 and 10. And as for the rest of the people who were left in the city, the deserters who had gone over to him and the rest of the people who remained, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the bodyguard, carried them into exile in Babylon. But some of the poorest people who had nothing, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the bodyguard, left behind in the land of Judah and gave them vineyards and fields at that time. So the poorest of the people were allowed to stay. They were given the fields and the vineyards. See, but there's no city. The city's gone. Totally destroyed. Now you take a group of poor people that are living out in fields. Usually eventually they fall under the category of victims. Verses 11 and 12, now Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, gave orders about Jeremiah through Nebuzaradan, the captain of the bodyguard, saying, take him and look after him, and do nothing harmful to him, but rather deal with him just as he tells you. Why does Jeremiah get this special treatment from Nebuchadnezzar? You know where it came from, Elohim, but why do you think he said it? I think he got word of what he was telling Zedekiah. Give up! Give up! Surrender and live. Elohim told Jeremiah he would be cared for when things were at their worst for him. This is your answer, Tom. When things are at his worst, he said, I'm going to take care of you. In Jeremiah 15, verse 11, Yahweh said, surely I'll set you free for purposes of good. Surely I'll cause the enemy to make supplication to you in time of disaster and a time of distress. And that's what happened. Verses 13 and 14. So Nebuzaradan, the captain of the bodyguard, sent word along with Nebuchadnezzar, the Reb-Saris, and Nergal-Sarezer, the Rabmag, and all the leading officers of the king of Babylon. They even sent and took Jeremiah out of the court of the guardhouse and entrusted him to Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam. I had to look that one up. How am I going to say it's not? I kept wanting to say Ahikam. No, in the Hebrew it's Ahikam. H will have a CH, a hard K sound, oftentimes. The son of Shaphan, to take him home, so he stayed among the people. The highest Babylonian officials on duty at the destruction of Jerusalem were given orders to protect Jeremiah. He was entrusted to Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam. Ahikam had protected Jeremiah when Jehoiakim wanted Jeremiah killed. That's back in Jeremiah 26, verses 23 and 24. And they brought Uriah from Egypt and led him to King Jehoiakim, who slew him with a sword and cast his dead body into the burial place of the common people. But the hand of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, was with Jeremiah, so that he was not given into the hands of the people to put him to death. Now, okay, I told you Jeremiah is not chronological. In this next passage, time is reversed to some time before the invasion. Elohim's going to have a word of comfort for Ebed-Melech, who saved Jeremiah from the cistern dungeon there where he was left to die. He's going to have a message for him. Verses 15 and 16 of Jeremiah 39. Now the word of Yahweh had come to Jeremiah while he was confined in the court of the guardhouse, saying, go and speak to Ebed-Melech the Ethiopian, saying, thus says the Yahweh of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, behold, I'm about to bring my words on this city for disaster and not for prosperity, and they will take place before you on that day. Now, this was back when Jeremiah was brought out of the cistern and he was taken into the nicer jail, okay, the court of the guardhouse. And lastly, but I will deliver you on that day, declares Yahweh, and you shall not be given into the hand of the men whom you dread. For I will certainly rescue you, and you'll not fall by the sword, but you will have your own life as booty, because you've trusted in me, declares Yahweh. Elohim will rescue Ebed-Melech when Jerusalem's destroyed. Elohim saved the eunuch because he trusted in Elohim at a very dangerous time. Any questions on Jeremiah 37 through 39? Not a happy ending. Could have had an okay ending, No, it's not a happy ending.
But Jeremiah's prayers were answered.
Yeah, that's true. And he was protected there at the end. And
Well, was it really a prayer? It was promised.
yeah, just promised by the Father. That's what comes with obedience, or promises from the Father of blessings. That's just it.
Just like you said earlier, just do what he tells you.
Just do what he tells you. Yeah.
Same for
Zedekiah.
Zedekiah.
Okay, Zedekiah, all he had to do was what Elohim said. That's all he had to do, and he would have lived. Everyone would have lived. They would have gone to Babylon, and they would have started their lives there for 70 years and then had the opportunity to go back. But if Zedekiah is not going to do what Elohim says all his life, why would he start then?
Because he was told to.
Well, he was told to before. He'd been told all his life to be obedient to the Father, and he wouldn't do it.
Well, apparently, Elohim put his thumb on him.
Right. Right. Well, he'd had enough. He was long-suffering and patient. Anybody else? Any thoughts?
It's similar to what's going on here is what's going on today, in the political arena, as far as this trial and all that stuff, with what's going on. Just because the other side's not hearing what they want, they continue on. People, they didn't like what they were hearing.
Are you saying that if they could, they'd drop Trump down into a cistern?
They probably would. That's probably what you're looking for. Do something like that.
Okay, let's pray and we'll be dismissed. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your word, and what we want, Father, is our eyes to be open and our ears to be open, and for you to give us a heart that's tender to learn your ways. We pray that your name be glorified. This we pray as your humble servants. Amen.